Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Purposeful Powerhouse podcast. Today, we are diving into the ROI of rest and why downtime is essential for your joy and quality of life and sustainable success. Because those things, yes, go hand in hand. But before we jump into that, hey, have you grabbed the Entrepreneur Freakout Prevention Therapy session yet? Only 5 minutes, totally free. People are loving it for the way that it brings them back to a place of groundedness and centered, get out of that frantic, frazzled, worn out entrepreneur vibe and back into your purposeful powerhouse CEO self. So you're back on point, in flow, getting it done. Here we go. Yep. Make sure to grab that, totally free, in the show notes. So let's talk about the fact that we live in a culture that is pressuring us to be always on. And actually, I shouldn't say that. I don't know where you are in the world, and that may not be the reality in your culture where you live. I should preface that, qualify that, and say that in North America and, in a lot of places, there is this pressure to be constantly performing. I know that is not accurate for people that live in Europe and in South America, where things are a little bit slower. They really enjoy the Dolce Vita and they slow down. And, that's amazing. And I really am a huge advocate for that. And that's really what this is about is slowing down and working with our natural rhythms. Because as human beings, we have those natural cycles, and nature shows us that, right? Nature has the cycle of daylight and function and growth and aliveness, and then there's rest at nighttime, right? The sun and the moon have different functions in our universe. So in our world, and in our bodies, we have these rhythms, right? We have our own circadian rhythms. And we actually have what is called an ultradian rhythm, which is a 90-minute cycle in our body where we alternate between excitement and energy and a slowing and a resting and a recovering phase. And so we just have those naturally, but we kind of bypass those with caffeine, with internal pressure. And so what we're going to talk about today is really the importance of intentionally slowing down so that you can have strategic stillness, so that you can have these moments of blank space. And let me know if you can relate to this. Having the experience of being in the shower or being out for a run or in the middle of a workout, and then all of a sudden it's like a beautiful funnel or space opens up in your brain, and there's just this download of inspiration and ideas because there was that blank space. And we have these moments of breakthrough. For example, when I created one of my first online yoga programs called Wake the Warrior Within, I was out on the lanai, I was doing yoga, and all of a sudden I just kept getting these ideas about how the parable of Virabhadra, the warrior that inspired the warrior poses, actually shows us these different elements of the poses themselves and how each one has a quality to it and how each quality is essential both in the pose, like for example, being grounded, and in life, it's so important for us to cultivate groundedness, and how each chapter of the story corresponds to warrior 1, warrior 2, warrior 3. And it was just like, whoa, pouring into my brain so fast, I could barely write it down and keep up. And it was one of those moments of, holy moly, what did I tap into here? Like, what sort of electrical socket did I get plugged into for a minute? Because it was just so incredible. And so I know that you've probably had that experience yourself, and it's so important for us to remember that that is available to us. But when we pressurize ourselves and we're always in this routine and role, feeling like we have to keep giving, we have to keep doing, it's a reminder for us that there is a very fine line between high functioning and overachieving. And high functioning there's a lot of gold stars put on that in our performance society and the entrepreneur and the business world. But the reality is it's not sustainable, and it's only sustainable through rest. And over functioning, i.e. overdoing, pushing yourself, overriding your natural rhythms and indications of tiredness or fatigue or exhaustion or depletion, is really the fast track to burnout. And so it's, we got to remember that it is okay for us to have an incomplete to-do list, regardless of, what our standards are for ourselves. It's okay, because the reality is there's always going to be more for us to do. And it's so important for us to have goals, but we're always going to be stretching. We're always going to be growing ourselves, and there's always going to be something else for us. And so if we're constantly putting ourselves in that gotta do more, gotta get there, gotta mode, it can lead to sacrifice of our sanity, sacrifice of our health, sacrifice enjoyment of quality of life. And it's a reminder that we must choose ourselves, because no one else is going to do that for you. We must choose ourselves, and you must choose yourself, because no one else is going to do that for you. And the reality is that when we have the discipline to slow down, to take power pauses, to do your entrepreneur freak out prevention therapy session, that self-discipline is the highest form of self-love. Because when you prioritize yourself, you are showing yourself and other people that you care so much about yourself now in this present current moment, but you also care about your vision and your goals and your future self, because you're hooking up your future self now and your dreams, because you're showing up for yourself today. Because we can't get to that finish line in the future if we are running on empty, if you're just running on the fumes of oat milk lattes and a couple almonds that you found in the bottom of the snack bag. It's not a recipe for success. And so we want to remember that constantly running in that stress state, right, is causes memory issues, it causes decision-making struggles, it causes cognitive fatigue, which lends to more mistakes. We tend to be short on patience and short with other people. And so that stress state is what is often called the red zone. And so we have these different states of operation when it comes to, the most current understanding of our nervous system. Polyvagal theory understands that there's many different aspects to our nervous system and the way that we handle challenges. And so when we're in that stressed out state, we're in that frantic, frazzled, worn out entrepreneur vibe. The red zone is not where we're operating at our peak, although that's what the pressure is for us to do. Whereas when you are in a steady state, a regulated state in your nervous system, you're grounded, you're taken care of, you're sleeping, you're eating, you're drinking water, you're doing the foundational stuff, you're in the green zone, and you're in that leadership energy. And that is that powerful, confident, magnetic vibe that is likely more aligned with the vibe of your vision than like on the verge of a meltdown or a freak out and you're like screaming at people or just screaming at yourself. That's probably not the vibe, right? So that the vibe of the green zone is that grounded, centered confidence of the purposeful powerhouse CEO that you truly are, right? And so how can we strategically stay in the green zone? Well, do a lot of the things I just mentioned, but have moments and pauses throughout the day to cultivate stillness. And very likely if you're here, you have these routines and rituals and rhythms baked in, and it's always a matter of just really reinforcing that and refining that and having those intentional moments. Because when life gets crazy, it's so tempting for us to say, I'm too busy to do this and I don't have time for this. And when you remember that in order for you to function at your peak performance, it does take you, your mind, your body, your spirit being nourished, being supported, and being in that green zone state of the stay and play. So in the stay and play state of our nervous system versus fight or flight, stay and play is where we have that effervescence, that energetic, uplifted element, but we are grounded, we're centered, we're regulated. So we are operating with dopamine, which is motivation and function and focus and joy. Whereas when we're in that red zone state, we are operating with cortisol being one of our main stress hormones, right? And so it's tight, it's pressurized, it's pushy, it's different. So how can we have strategic stillness throughout the day, right? It's like when you were little, when the teacher would send us out for recess and they would take a break, right? They're like, whew, gotta take a break. These kids are crazy. It was for the adults for sure, but it was for us as well, because A, 90% of the nourishment to your brain comes from movement of your spine, right? And so that was discovered by a Nobel Peace Prize laureate or winner. Is a laureate a prize winner? I'm not sure. Let me know. Someone very smart named Roger Perry, and he discovered that we, to nourish our brain, we have to move our spine. So sitting sedentary still in the chair, i.e. sleeping booty, hello, in the ouchy slouchy situation that we can all get into, is not conducive to your performance. And it's no wonder that it's the fast track to pain and distraction and burnout and exhaustion and fatigue when we're sitting for long periods of time, right? And so ideally, we're getting up at least every 30 minutes, getting up and moving, although that may not feel long enough for you. Maybe you have a standing situation. That's incredible. I gold star that. So taking these strategic power pauses throughout the day to use the natural rhythms of your body. So I mentioned earlier, right? You probably are familiar with the circadian rhythm. That's the rhythm where we have release of melatonin when the light naturally starts to diminish, and so it's really important that we are aware of that and minimize our exposure to blue light at sleepy times, at night times. And so that's important for us to be aware of. And then, of course, we have the ultradian rhythm. So that's the rhythm that we talked about a little bit. And that's where it's about a 90-minute cycle of focused energy in the brain. And so our brain loves novelty and it loves innovation. And so it loves to have new challenges. And so at about the 90-minute mark, there's a very significant decrease in energy in the brain and in the brain activity, which lends to distractibility, it lends to focus issues, it lends to impatience. And so it's important for us to use that natural rhythm to your advantage. And so you can use these cycles. Some people have longer cycles, like 90 minutes. Some people have 45. If you're neurodivergent like me and many other people, you may find that you hyper-focus for a period of time. And then if you get interrupted, that can throw off your game, or, you may have a challenging time getting and staying focused. So you know yourself best. Just pay attention to those and then use them. Right? Not try to override them and try to override that anxiety or exhaustion or that distractibility. And you're like trying to finish the email sequence. You're like, okay, I just really want to get my open cart sequence finished. But then you find yourself over on TikTok or Instagram and you're like, wait, what am I doing? I'm supposed to be writing an email right now. And you can't get your brain to stay on task. And so that's an indicator that it's a time for rest. Okay. So time to step away from the computer. Okay. And so the interesting thing, and it's called Parkinson's law, is that whatever we are doing expands to the time that we give it. And so if you give yourself a very dedicated time period of, say, 45 minutes, and you're going to get as much as you can done, really focused, phone on do not disturb, getting in there, taking action, doing the thing. And then after that time is up, whatever you set it to be, having an intentional break is so, so impactful, because then you're giving yourself that change. You're giving your brain novelty. You're giving yourself a different point of focus. Ideally, you're getting up and moving your body, because in case you forgot, you're not a rock. And back to Roger's research about the brain nourishment, it's important that you move, right? And so that's where your energy comes from. It's a natural boost of energy. And so it's so important that we're constantly refreshing and recharging. And so that's where that always on culture has a hole in it, right? And that's what I hear from a lot of people, like, oh, I'm just so busy, I don't have enough time to get to exercise. Well, actually, when you exercise in the morning, which is what Rise and Vibe movement is all about, it can increase your productivity, your focus, your performance by upwards of 72%. And so that is because it's a natural source of energy. You're literally revving up your inner fire, your metabolism, you're oxygenating your muscles, you're oxygenating your brain, you're sending nourishment, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, there's all the benefits of exercise, of bone density and muscle strength and confidence and hormone regulation and all of that incredibleness. So it's actually a farce. It's actually a lie that, when we tell ourselves, oh, I don't have time for this, it actually produces more time. And when you are feeling super in your body, in yourself, you're feeling like tapped in, you're feeling in your power, you're feeling like, yes, I can do this. you are not only a nicer human to be around, but you are actually able to get more done. You are in that state of possibility and hopefulness. You're in the green zone, right? You're in the different aspect of your brain and yourself and your energy system, because you're not in the stressed out state, right? We're not as active in the amygdala. We're more in the prefrontal cortex. That's where we have our creativity and our inspiration. It's the Mozart mind, right? The Einstein, rather than the Frankenstein mind, as John Assaraf calls it, which I think is quite clever. So the Einstein mind is that possibility, right? And that creativity and the opportunity. So making sure that we are making use of these intentional breaks. And of course, right, when we are high performing, high achieving, again, you will hear yourself saying those things like, oh, I that's silly. Don't stop right now. Get it done. Get it done. And I'll do it later. Right. I'll do it later. And later, I don't know what this like arbitrary later is. It never seems to really happen for a lot of people, but it's that importance and the reminder that you are the CEO, right? You're in charge. And so you get to make the rules. And so it's a matter of caring for yourself now and having the discipline to make this a practice so that it is really becomes your habit. It becomes a non-negotiable. It just is who you are, because you value how you feel so much, and you know that that is your life force, literally your life force, and that's the driving force in your business and in your work. So making use of those 90-minute cycles. And then the interesting thing is that those cycles and rest and sleep are really what build resilience, right? In my book, The Warrior's Journey, Ancient Wisdom for the Modern Entrepreneur, we talked about resilience as bounce back ability. And as I mentioned earlier, the story of the warrior, the warrior is resilient and continues to carve the path and the journey forward amidst the challenges, amidst the perceived obstacles, right? And it's such a core element of entrepreneurship, of being able to recognize and witness where we are and acknowledge how far we've come and the growth that we've had, so that we are looking at it from a very opportunistic perspective, a growth mindset perspective, instead of just comparing our progress to our goal. And so, as we mentioned, the goal is always going to be moving. The horizon is always going to be just a little bit out of reach. And so it's an interesting concept that I think is really important for us to remember, is when we look at ourselves and when we look at these moments of, challenge, it's that recognition of who you have become because of the experience, how you've grown, what you've learned, etc. And so it builds that ability to look at things that way and to be willing to be curious and be open. Because when we've all had that experience of feeling just like tapped out on your last leg, and you're like, what? I'm exhausted. I just have to do this one more thing, and then you end up doing it, and it's just not it's not quality. It's not up to snuff, if you will. And you have to go back and do it later. And so it's like, we have this really interesting sort of paradox of, oh, I just got to push through, but you're not performing at a high level. And it's a matter of being willing to take a step back and prioritize your health, your physical, your mental, your emotional health, your mental health, so that you can continue to show up, right? We saw that with so many of the incredible Olympic athletes recently, of how much they were talking about their mental health and how it's a key component of their resilience and their ability to continue to show up and win gold medals, right? Or not, or just get to the Olympics. Like, hello, that's a huge accomplishment, because that there is so much that is benefited, systemically in our body when we rest. And, my coach, James Wedmore, says the rest is the work, and we slow down to speed up. And it's like that, the drawing back of the arrow is that we pull back, we slow down. And the more we pull back and the more we slow down, the more we can go and the farther we can go, right? Because I'm not an archer, so correct me if I'm wrong. But if you only pull back just a little bit on the bow, the arrow isn't going to go as far. But if you really pull it back and you retract the arm back and you're pulling back and you're creating that momentum, you're able to propel it further forward, because there is that energy behind it. So, Hopefully that analogy made sense. But it's that the charging the battery analogy, right? It's like, your phone after a while, I don't know. I don't know how often you're meant to turn it off, but I definitely charge my phone every night. Are you charging your battery every day? That's the question, right? That's what we're talking about. And the other thing is that, after a while, yeah, sure, maybe you're charging your battery, this, that, and the other thing. You notice that your phone starts to get a bit glitchy. It does weird things. The apps are being funny, and you realize, maybe I haven't turned my phone off in like 2 weeks. That's why it's being weird. And so it's that reset, right? That internal moment of intentional recalibration that comes, because the reality is we either get to put these into practice and we get to put these into our daily and weekly flow, or the universe has a way of putting them in there for us, right? And that's, we've all gotten to that point of like, powering through a launch, really giving, really showing up, doing it. And then on the other side, you're like flat out exhausted and you go into shutdown mode. Right. And so it's a freeze function of the nervous system is shutting down. Right. And so that's an interesting function that we see, is that basically, an animal, if it's being pursued by a predator, shuts down and pretends that it's dead. So it thinks it's dead and everything slows down, and it's a recovery and it's a protective mechanism from them overdoing it. And so, we have only to really witness these things with curiosity and love to recognize, like, oopsie, maybe that was a little bit much, right? And so it's we get to learn and we get to look back at how this has showed up for you. And if you're like me and you've experienced burnout and you recognize, it's so important to have these intentional moments through your movement, through your meditation, through your whatever it is you're doing for yourself, to be able to choose yourself, because no one can do that for you. And really having these moments of pouring back into yourself, because it has a really high ROE, return on energy. Because when you pour into yourself as the driving force in your business, it's going to propel you forward to be able to do the things, but from a place of joy, of love and curiosity and expansion and playfulness, not propel you forward from the like, oh my God, this is so hard. Oh my God, what am I doing? And that push energy. It's a very different energy, right? You're getting pulled forward by these exciting goals that you have for yourself, by your vision. You're getting pulled forward towards that, because you are fully taken care of, you are replenished. And so, that's the ROE, that's the return on energy, is when you pour into yourself, you're literally creating energy in your body. Your mitochondria, the little engines of your cells, are rejuvenated. Your brain the function is improving. Like, there is so much that happens when you are doing workouts, doing yoga, taking your power pauses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that really benefit you. And of course, there is an ROI, that's the return on investment. And I think that investment is the investment that you make in yourself, because you are the ultimate gift. You are your number one asset. And so it's so important that you are investing in your own self through these different tools, through these different pauses, so that you can, get the rewards, right? And it was kind of cheeky, because, there's a lot of, like, we've talked about how, self-care can make you more money and like this, that, and the other thing. And that's okay. And it's true. And of course that's important, right? Of course, because you're more creative, you're more on point, your vibe is different, your nervous system is regulated, people are attracted to that, you're speaking more clearly, you're able to articulate yourself, you're showing up, you're taking actions, you are following through. Like, there is an opportunity to generate direct revenue from these. But I really wanted to speak to it from the point of, you are your number one asset. And when you invest in yourself, the return from that is really high and very, very, very fulfilling and vital, right? Vital, because your heart, hi, your lungs, here we go, your brain, yes, okay, you get my point. It is the actual physical function of your body that we are prioritizing, because that directly impacts how you feel and directly impacts the quality of your life and being able to enjoy each and every day rather than feeling like you are just hanging on by a thread and you're getting whipped around in the craziness of life and you don't know which way is up or down and you can't tell your ass from your head because you just are so freaking tired and burnt out and you're ready to throw in the towel, but yet you got to keep going because you're in the middle of a launch and you don't want to give up because you're not a quitter. It's a different vibe. It's a totally different vibe when you are willing to have the self-discipline to prioritize these actions because you just freaking care about your vision. You freaking care about yourself and you want to show up because you know that when you show up for yourself first, everything else in your life benefits. That is the ROI. So I think I could probably stop there. I will slowly step down off the soapbox, and I hope that I made my point. But yes, sum it all up. You are incredible. You are valuable. You are important, and we need you. Please take care of yourself. And if you haven't already, grab the Entrepreneur Freakout Prevention Therapy session. It's 5 minutes. You know me, I like to get it in there, get it done. Yup. You'll learn how to take a power pause, which is what that is, using movement, using breath, using intention, using that beautiful nervous system of yours. And so it's an incredible way to calm the crazy and be able to skip the messy meltdown and just really stay on top of things because you're really making this top priority. It's the top of the list. All right. So the link to do that is in the show notes. And until next time, you're amazing. Thank you so much for using your mind like the powerful tool that it is, because otherwise it will run amok and, throw us all over the place and tell us that we don't have time for this because that's nonsense. And then moving your body on purpose to keep it strong and healthy so that you can show up on purpose as your purposeful powerhouse CEO self. Until next time, thank you so much for being part of this community. And I'm so grateful for you. And I'm really proud of you because you're out there doing big things and that's freaking amazing. See you soon. Lots of love.